There I am. Oh man, awesome. Hey everybody, we're back, and we're coming into the home stretch of class, but a really good week of class right now. We have a special class today, a really cool class today, and on Thursday I think is just going to be a really unique experience. So we are so really looking forward to it. So. But today, I do want to say a couple things today, if I could. So if you guys can throw up some of those slides. So you remember our friend Mari Lucy in Brazil. We had that class and we talked to her and some of the kids, and we raised money. And I wired money down. I wired $900 down. You all raised a certain amount, and I topped it off. And I never like to say how much we raised or how much people contribute because I don't know. I just don't. I never want to turn things into competition, but anyway, we can flow through some of these slides. She sent. They had an Easter party for the kids, and you can go pretty fast. And so she sent a bunch of photos up, and I picked some. That's Monty Lucy right there, and so just bought gifts for all the kids and their families, and just something for the kids, right? Because it's like, just to get a gift is a really, really nice thing. A gift that's wrapped in particular is cool. And so these are all kids that are part of this. Okay. These are all kids that are very much part of her, that are part of this after school program that she's doing. And it's just a really nice thing. So anyway, she sent a big, huge thanks to everybody and involved in Social 19, and really is happy that we were able to help with that. And the kids were really happy, and the kids had a great day, and it looks like it was a beautiful day. So that's cool. And I give a thanks as well. Hey, on another note, another thing, tonight, right after class, so Penn State, there's a K-pop competition. So students submitted videos of them singing and dancing their favorite K-pop songs or songs from their favorite artists. And anyway, tonight they selected the finalists, and they're going to perform them live. And so there's we will put the chat out there. If you do K-pop in the chat, you can get the link for that for tonight. And so that's cool. If you want to see that, be part of it, maybe next year you'll want to be part of it. But I said it's kind of last minute that I got this information, but I said I would definitely send it out to the class. So 6 to 7:30 tonight. And we're definitely recruiting for Stream Team in the fall, because it's looking like we're going to be back in 100 Thomas. And we have a couple sections of Social 19. They're both going to be in there. So there are 2 sections on Lion Path you'll see that I'm teaching, and they both will be in 100 Thomas if anyone has any questions. But we're really looking for folks who want to be part of the Stream Team. So if you are interested, and you don't have to know anything about anything at all. Well, if you're a video editor, we really like you to, if you don't have experience, we at least would like you to want to gain some experience. But we're definitely we always want a couple editors who have some skills using Premiere. You can whisper Jeff and Niche, but camera operators, you don't have to know anything, but you will just experience so you'll get credit, you'll get sociology credit for this, and you'll just experience Social 19 from inside of 100 Thomas. So, and we are still recruiting for facilitators for next year, World in Conversation facilitators. I'll send another email out on that. But another quick announcement. So we're doing, World in Conversation is doing some conversations in Bogota. So we have partners in Bogota. So you can put up that next announcement. And so por favor, we have some partners, our partners in Bogota. There are a number of students who don't speak any English, and so they can't really participate with Penn State dialogues with Penn State students. Pero si usted habla español bien, no tiene que hablar fluidos, sino, pues, sin embargo, bien, suficiente bien, como yo, más o menos. Sería muy bien si pueden participar en esos diálogos, ¿no? ¿Está bien? So you can, pueden contactar Lily para, para recibir la información. ¿Está bien? Okay. All right, man. So listen, let's go. Let's start class. Today's class is Conforming and Belonging, and this title really comes from Lori, who said a couple things to me, and we were thinking about how best to have a conversation with Bassem, who is our guest today, who you will remember from the reading, but I'll come back to that. And so we were thinking, she was saying that, the thing about Bassem that jumps out probably as much as anything, but the one thing sociologically for her anyway that really jumps out is Bassem's willingness to not be conformist and his willingness to swim upstream and to respond to this incredible tragedy in his life in a way that is absolutely different from the vast majority of people, the way the vast majority of people would respond. And I started thinking, like, that's absolutely true. And so, she was saying, like, think about how much, like conforming, Lori's quote is, conforming is the steady state of social life, right? Which is really a very cool quote. Conforming is the steady state of social life, meaning we are conforming 99.99% of the time in our lives. Everything we do, everything we think, what we feel, et cetera, we're conforming. And in this culture in particular, we elevate individuality to such a degree that, we think it's the highest form of life. It's the best thing to do. Be an individual. Be different. Don't be like anybody else. And the fact is, it's really that it's a myth in so many ways that we can be individuals, right? I mean, we're human beings because we have been socialized to not conform and to belong. And so conforming means that we're aligning ourselves with a group and that we are belonging in that group. Conforming allows us to do that. And of course, we all want to belong. We need to belong. That's just the nature of being alive. And so, like we eat with a fork and we eat with a spoon, and we eat a certain way. I was telling Lori the story this morning when I was the first meal I had in a sort of like a post breakfast meal in Tokyo. I went to the central fish market in Tokyo, and I was just walking through the fish market, and then I saw this restaurant, and I said, hey, I'm gonna just hop in there and have a bowl of soup. And so I did. And then, I was kind of eating my soup, and the person next to me was eating their soup, and they were like slurping it. They picked the bowl up and they were slurping it really loud. Like, I don't have water in my mouth, so I can't do it. But I was like, whoa, okay. And then, somebody else did it. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I started to, remember, like, oh, hang on a second, like this is a custom, this is a different kind of thing, right? And I'm realizing, that's like this conforming. Now, I didn't feel a need to belong or need to conform, so I didn't do it myself. I don't recall that I did. I might have. I don't remember. Maybe I just slurped my beer. But the clothes we wear, everything you do, we're conforming constantly. And so, but nobody accepts the idea. Once again, this goes back. None of us accept the idea that 99% of our behavior and 99.9 probably percent of our thoughts are conformist behavior and thoughts, but they really are. And so it's notable when somebody steps outside the lines and decides, hey, I'm not going to conform. Like, I'm going to do this differently. And then to have the pressures on that person, to just kind of bring them back into the fold, to bring them back to conform in some way. Those pressures happening, yet they still are able to really maintain the path that they are on. And that is something that makes Bassem such a notable human being. So just as a reminder, right? Bassem, can you put up the that first page, the image from that first page that, so this was the article that you all read. So I want to bring you back. I know that, like, those of you who are in Social 118, you will be, memory only goes back so far. So I want you to be really clear about, about who our guest is today. Bassem can give us a window, and what I'd like to do is I'm going to invite Bassem to give us a window into what it's like to follow a nonconformist path in this one aspect of his life, because in other aspects of Bassem's life, just like my life, just like everybody's life, I can be a nonconformist in one moment, but I'm conforming in 100 other moments, right? So this is the story, right? So if you're I guess I can quickly summarize the story of, maybe we can ask Bassem to do that. So hey, why don't we bring our friend onto the screen here, and we will get started.
Hello, Sam.
1 second. Bassem, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am quite well. Let's see. There you are. Did you just get a haircut? Looking good.
I need a haircut. My hair is long now.
Mine's long too. Lori was saying this. I gotta get a haircut. Erbil, where Bassem's living in Erbil, the Kurds, they're like Turks. They have these amazing barber shops. If you've ever been to a Turkish bar, if you're a man, you've never been to a Turkish barber, take the opportunity and go. It's like just a whole body experience. Anyway, how are things in Erbil?
Good. Well, sadly, COVID-19, the second phase, is back. Erbil today announced that they have like 250 cases, few deaths in Erbil. It seems second phase is coming, and they're shutting borders again, and curfew on Friday, Saturday. So staying home, wearing my mask, and trying not to go out more than needed.
Yeah. Well, definitely be safe, my friend. Yeah. But hey, so you heard me. First off, can you and I together because there will be some people who are watching who, first off, there'll be some of my students who just read that article last week and watched my TED Talk last week, right? But, who forget already. So, but there'll also be other people who are watching the stream who don't know our relationship in the story. So maybe together we can just say, you know what? Yeah, go ahead. Maybe together we can just say.
I will. Yeah. Well, it all started about
just 11 in just 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. It all started about 11 years ago. I was sitting in front of my desktop around 11.
Oh, wait, hang on, Bassem. I have to stop you. I'm really sorry. Okay. Hold on. Hey, class, the first top head is going up in 15 seconds. Okay. Hang on. 20 seconds. It's going up right now. Okay, Bassem, my friend, go.
So about 11 years ago, I was watching some YouTubes around 10:30 p.m. And this TEDx talk caught my attention with the word radical experiment of empathy. I did not know what empathy meant, so I looked it up at the dictionary and I watched your video, your TED talk. I watched it twice that night. The next night I watched it again, and that's how it all started between you and me. A few days later, I emailed you. About 2 or 3 weeks later, you replied to me. And then we got talking, and few years I started joining your class, Skyping into your class. And 2018, we met for the first time when you invited me to visit Penn State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And and in the meantime, a lot of things happened in your hometown of Mosul.
Yeah,
That the
since in 2014, June 2014, Mosul was invaded by ISIS. In September of that year, in 2015, my house was bombed, and I lost my wife, my daughter, my brother, and my nephew, and I left Iraq. And I did not go back to Mosul until 2017, when it was liberated from ISIS. But the cost of liberation of the city was devastating. The city was totally destroyed, especially the old city, which is the west, we call it the west bank of the river Tigris. I have always wanted to go back, but every time I go back, I have really sad memories of what happened to my family, and that's why I'm still in Erbil.
Mhm. Although your mother is in
My
Mosul
mother is,
still.
yeah, my mother is in Mosul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bassem, walk us. So think about what I said. You were listening to me in the very beginning about
Yeah.
conformity, and do you see yourself as a in this way as a nonconformist? Is that
Well, definitely I am a nonconformist because after the bombing of my house and when I returned from Turkey, I had the idea that I needed to know what happened, why my house was bombed. I needed to have answers. I needed to get my name cleared because I was labeled as an ISIS member. So I gathered the report and I visited U.S. Embassy. And frankly, almost everybody laughed at me. They said, "What are you doing? Are you going against the United States government?" I said, "Well, I'm not going against anybody. I just wanted my story to be heard and I wanted answers." And it started from there. And for 4 years, I was in legal battles with the US government, the US Army, until a year ago when I was told that the bombing was done by mistake and my name was cleared. So if I was conforming to a certain criteria, I wouldn't have done any of this.
Mhm, mhm. You would have gone a very different direction.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was just sitting home and trying to just think of what happened, but I'm not doing anything about it, and that's just
Mhm,
not me. I just wanted answers. I wanted to know what happened.
mhm. So how about this? So tell us a little bit about your inner process of when you first woke up. Say so after the accident, after the bombing, you first woke up and you were injured, and then you to that time, the first time you came back and spoke in 119. So you had spoken in 119 before the accident, and then so from the bombing until you came back in, like tell us a little bit about the process that you went through in your inner process, your mind.
Well, I think I stopped talking to Social 119 for over a year. I just couldn't get
Yeah.
myself. Yeah, I couldn't get my. I didn't have the courage to speak about what happened because I would always break down. But I built up my courage and I came back and remember when you talked to me, you said, Bassem, you have to come. I said, Sam, I cannot do it. You said, yes, I will be with you. I will help you. Let's do it again. Let's get you back to Social 19 again. Uh, so many ideas came into my mind in a year. My whole life changed. Uh, my daily routine changed. My living uh, expenses went up because I now have no house. I was renting, my son was renting. So everything changed. But in a year, I had the help of so many friends in the US. I had the help of a journalist. I have the help of a good friend lawyer, and I had you all the time supporting me and pushing me to talk. Just keep talking.
And how did your thinking go? Really, think about, what allowed you to let go of blame in that time? You know what I mean? Because think about conformity, right? Think about the first time you spoke in class in social when you came and visited here. So what happened, class, was that the first time Bassem came back online and spoke to the class after the bombing, after we finished, it was really powerful. It was really just a beautiful shared experience. And you on the screen in 100 Thomas, and 750 people watching and listening to your words. After we got off, the class someone said, can't he come here? Can we bring him in here? I said, well, we don't have any money to bring him here. And people said, let's raise money right now. And in that moment, in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just right then, people just donated the money that we needed to bring you here. And then you came the next semester. So that's the story for my current Social 19 class. Then Bassem, you came, you spoke in person, and remember what every one of the questions was at the end of class? Everything that everybody said to you when you finished speaking. It's like, what they all wanted, you can say it or I can say it, one of us, but
they always ask, how can you not hate?
Yeah.
How can you forgive? How can you talk to us as Americans, but who killed your family? And
they all said, because we would hate, right?
We would hate. They said, if you did the same to us, we would hate you.
And so you went through and this is what Lori's talking about. You went through some process of like, the conformist view is hate, right? Is blame and hate. That's what 99% of everybody would do. But you didn't do that. You swam upstream.
I am still being asked the question after 5 years of why I do not hate. I keep answering, but it seems that I am not able to get my point of view to the conforming people around me.
Mm-hmm. And that point of view is
forgiveness.
Yeah, that's a really controversial word. It's a provocative word. It's a powerful word. You know what Lori said this morning? She said something, she said the reason we have these different ideas in all the religions, like forgiveness is central to every single spiritual tradition. It's central to Islam. It's central to Christianity. It's central to Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, every core religion in the world. The reason is that it's central is because it's so incredibly difficult. And
my faith as Muslim helps me through the process. Faith, to me, we've always talked about this. I believe in fate, and I believe that everything that happened to me was planned to me by God's superpower. So not to forgive, it will just hurt me. You know the story that the bombing was done by the Dutch, and I have offered that I would meet the pilot who bombed me, because he sent messages through intermediary people who was the journalist who told me about the story. And I said, listen, I would love to meet him, but is he ready? Am I ready? I don't know.
Yeah. So the process, so it didn't just happen because you didn't feel forgiveness immediately.
Oh, no.
Okay, so teach us that. Teach us the field of nonconformist forgiveness. Like, what happened with you? Like, what were some of the steps that you went through? So that, and I ask this because, when others of us are in a similar kind of situation and are stuck, they can think back to what Bassem said. You charted the terrain, you know what I mean? You carved the path. So What were some of those footsteps?
For the first, after the bombing was done, I was in Mosul for 1 month. I was totally numb. Everybody will be around me, but I was completely isolated. I was shutting myself like in a cocoon. And then I left to Turkey, and I was in Turkey for 3 months in a bed. I couldn't move for 3 months. And then after I returned to Iraq in February of 2016, I was not on a wheelchair, I was on crutches. I was moving on crutches. And I would sit down by myself for hours and hours and hours. And for the first time, I'm a Muslim, but I am not a really hardcore Muslim, because for the first time I read the Quran when I was back in Baghdad, because I had so much time. And I felt that God saved me, because my late wife, was lying next to me like a foot away from me, and she was killed and I was saved. There must be a reason why I was saved. There must be a reason. And I kept thinking to myself, what was this reason? What was the reason? First, I was convinced that I was spared to be a father to my son who was not in Mosul, and that God did not want him to lose both parents. So he spared his dad and he took his mom. So for months and months, I was just thinking with myself, why was I saved? Why was I spared? Why was I not killed? And then after my operation, I really did not think that I will walk again. But after 4 months, I was walking, and I was so thankful and so happy that I was up on my feet and walking. And that's when I wanted to tell my story to the world, because of my connections, because of my English. I wanted to be the voice of the people who are unheard, who cannot take their voices outside of Mosul. And after my case was resolved, I'm now working with people in the United States to be the voice of the people who lost loved ones, and I'm filling forms for them. I'm translating for them. It became a mission for me to help. And that was the evolving in the past 5 years in my life.
So is there a way then in which that the mission of being this connector between cultures, between worlds, this global peacemaker, is there a way in which that intersected with your own personal journey? Like, you couldn't be that connector if you were driven by hate and anger and rage, right? There's no way you could do that job like you.
Oh no, definitely. If I hated, I could not produce. I'll be a boiling person sitting just hating. This was not me, and I could not live the rest of my life like this. Mm-hmm. And that's how so many young people in Mosul were hurt by ISIS. And on my second visit to Penn State, remember when we talked, and you, Laurie, and I, of the idea of bringing world conversation to Mosul, and that became like a new frontier for me. And we've been doing it for 3 years now, and I'm so happy. There's so many misconceptions about the Americans and about the Iraqis, and connecting Iraqis and American students will bring these misconceptions to reality and guide them to talk together and share their dreams, share their problems. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. So it becomes this, it's so much bigger. Hey, remember when you were here, I think it was the last time you were here, you were speaking in Laurie's class or to some of our students, and somebody said to you that, Laurie reminded me of this, that that forgiveness is the response of the oppressed. Forgiveness is the response of the oppressed, right? And the idea is, like, you can't fight back. Like, you can't fight. You have no power to fight back, and so you just have to give in and forgive. And once you give in and forgive, that becomes the source of power. a power that you can never know otherwise, because then the other person doesn't control you. You control your own destiny. Does that resonate? Do you remember that, or what do you say to that, or what would you
Yeah, I
say?
do remember. Yeah. I was told this by some of my friends. They said, you forgive because there's nothing you can do. I said, well, there is so much I did, even with the forgiveness. Forgiveness is something spiritual for me to feel calm, but I did not give in. I went to Congress, I went to Fort Meade, I talked to so many officials. We filed the lawsuit. I did not stand still. But
Yeah.
forgiveness is something else that kept me calm so I can clear my head and think straight. But if I did not forgive, I would be angry and I would be unproductive.
Yeah. 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 That's very cool. It's like that's actually okay. So that's an important step, right? So the first step was you taught us one thing, that you don't just forgive. Like forgiveness comes. It's a process, right? So it doesn't happen all at once. It's a something that has to happen in order for you to come back into the world and do something productive, and not productive, but anything really connected to loving. Like there's going to have to be forgiveness involved, because you can't hate over here and love over here. Like to think they don't go together. You either the love is coming from yourself.
It has to be one. It has to be one path. You cannot divert. Straightforward. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it happens all at once, right? Because it didn't happen all at once for you. Yeah.
It's a longer process of feeling calm with yourself, thinking, knowing what to do, and taking the right steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so I want to come back to your friends and other people. So in a second, I want to do that. But first thing I want to do is we're going to do the second top hat right now, y'all. So that is going up in about 20 seconds. And of the three people on the stream, Ryan, Kaylee, and Colby, I want to bring the first one of you on who at this point has a question for Bassem. And so if you do, whichever one would be like, yep, Ryan does. So Jeff, can you bring Ryan on the stream? And Top Hat y'all is there, so. Okay. Ryan. Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Ryan, say hi to Bassem. Bassem, Ryan.
How are you?
Hi, Ryan.
Hi. I have a question for you. I was listening to your story. It's something that's very unique, and I've never experienced anything kind of like this. And I feel like, do you have the same level of like forgiveness that you had before the accident, or it was something that like, or how did they change? I feel like afterward.
Well,
can I rephrase that? Actually, that's a really cool question.
Okay.
So you must have experienced this feeling of forgiveness at different places in your life along the way. So how is this one different, right?
Well, since childhood, I was known to be a forgiving person. I'll give you a story. Like when me and my little brother would fight, I would forgive him in like 10 minutes. It's not out of, maybe this is the way I was built. I don't know. The way I think, I love people. I cannot see somebody. If I hurt somebody, I will be really sad, and I would like to make it up to him if I was wrong. So the forgiveness was since I was a child, but it grew in a different way. It grew to be for me to be productive, to calm myself, because what happened to me was really devastating. And if I did not forgive, I would not be here, and I would be a different person. I met somebody who lost his family too, and he's now on drugs, on pills, just because he cannot forgive. He just he keeps on hating and hating and hating. And I talked to him about my experience. And I said, listen, you lost a family, I lost a family. Let's think about it this way. He said, no, I will never forgive. I will never forgive. And the difference between me and him, I'm here in front of you doing something good. And he is on pills and probably alcoholic. I don't know. So two different combinations. That's the difference. If you can forgive, you'll be at peace with yourself.
Mm. Ryan, what do you think about that answer?
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of it, the way you respond to things, like in this situation, that I feel like if I was in your shoes, I would be angry. I would feel like, hey, like so many things happen to me that I can like make excuses, or like this is bad. This is not how I feel like my life should have been, and like getting stuck in the past. I feel like I would have done. I wouldn't have the courage to do that. But it definitely is. I mean, I've personally, and it's like it's hard to forgive. It is definitely hard, and it's like I feel like if you can do that, you can take that level of like discipline and not like be upset. I feel like it's definitely good.
So Ryan, here's a question for you. So you just said right now you don't think you would have the courage to forgive.
No.
Why courage? Like where does, I want to ask you, and then I want to ask Bassem to answer this as well. Like, how does courage fit into forgiveness?
Courage is like, forgiveness is like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Courage, it's taking you. I feel like I naturally want to hate, and I feel like it's taking that situation and accepting it, and not like shifting the blame to somebody else, or in moving on. I think moving past something and not like staying in the past, and being able to move on is, it's a lot of courage for, especially for Bassem, to speak out and talk about this. I mean, it's something that, you know, sometimes you don't want to bring up, or just kind of want to avoid it. I feel like it's a lot of courage to I think a lot of to like address your problems head on, like, hey, this is what happened. Like, you have the courage to speak up, and I feel like you get less power over it.
So it's having the ability to walk into a future that is unknown.
Yeah.
And that's very risky, right? And that's where so what I just heard you say is that's where the courageousness comes from, that you walked into a risky future. Bassem, how about you? How would you say?
I think, I don't know if you agree with me, but I would think that the age difference between me and Ryan, like if what happened to me like 40 years ago, I was 25 maybe, I would probably act a different way. But when I was 55, my reaction was different. Yes, it is courageous to forgive, because you will fight against odds. You will fight against people who would think that what you did is wrong. I mean, you should not forgive. You should fight. And it does take courage to forgive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Huh. Ryan, any final quick question you want to ask Bassem?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I feel like if your life experience is going through, I know you're not my age, but you're a bit older, like, was it like a series of events that have kind of led you to more patience through courage, or is it kind of, like you said, you've had it since since a young age, or like, how has that kind of gone throughout your life?
Well, they say with age comes wisdom. I'm not saying I'm wise, but
you're pretty wise, my friend. But go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Your way of thinking of things is different. I will give you an idea. 25 years ago, if somebody honked a horn at me when I was driving, I would be mad as hell. Now I'll just give him the way. Say, keep going. I will not pick up a fight. So I think that age has a lot to do, in my case, of how I reacted, how I managed myself, and how I carried myself on.
Yeah, Ryan, I can double down on that idea. Age has a way of softening, can have a way of softening the edges. It doesn't work for everybody, but if you allow it to, it just does its own magic. Yeah, it does its own magic. So You pray for it enough, and then it happens. So, yeah, that's cool. Thanks for that question. That's a nice question. All right, man. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah, be well. Yeah. Hey, so Bassem, I want to go. You mentioned something about your friends, right? And as we shift open, so I want to actually go in that direction for a minute, if we could. And so what kinds of things did they say as you were, so you were being this nonconformist, right? You weren't following the path of everybody else. What are some of the things that they said to you?
Well,
to bring you back into the fold, right?
Yeah, one of the things that they keep saying to me, that because I lived in the United States for 8-9 years, they said, well, my mind was watched by the Americans, and that I sympathize with them and I give them excuses, and I'm not being realistic, and they just keep saying these things about me.
And did those things they're like mind worms, right? They go into through our ears, and they just go and they lay eggs, and then these worms start growing new ideas in our mind.
Yeah.
How did that happen for you?
It did not affect me. It did not affect me at all.
Yeah. So did you lose any friends along the way?
No. I wouldn't lose a friend over such a thing, because making friends is not easy. So losing a friend is very hard, and I only have a few friends, and at this age it's not easy to lose a friend, and it's difficult to make new ones.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear that. Yeah. And I guess when I think about losing friends, I think of you. I think of people. Have there been any people who just can't? They can't sit with this idea that you don't hate, and that they just can't tolerate that in their mind. It doesn't fit with the way, because if they did accept it, then they would have to see things in themselves that they don't want to see. And I think that's what happens often, So then
well, yeah, we argue most of the time, but when you reach a certain point, as I said, let it be, change the subject.
Yeah. Well, when Lori and I were with you in Iraq and met some of your friends, it's clear that there's a deep love and companionship. So there's as there is between us, So that's there's. And you're right. There's a certain age. It just doesn't make sense to fight it and to battle it. So I have another. I have a thing. Actually, Lori also brought this up. When Americans hear your story, there's a way in which it's you represent something, because first off, people have a very deep and troubled misconception of Islam and Muslims, which is just problematic by itself, right? Mm-hmm. And as Muslims have a very deep and distorted understanding of Christians, right? So like in the class, for example, that TED talk that I did, when I, put the viewer in the shoes of average, ordinary Muslims in Iraq, of which, Bassem, his first email to me was saying, hey, I'm one of those average, ordinary Arab Muslims in Iraq. But the original version of that video was called Christian Invaders. Because what I said to myself was, if I'm in Iraq and all these people are coming here to take the oil, they're here as invaders. They're here, but they're not just invaders, they're Christian invaders. So I'm thinking, this is how people around the world have a very distorted or a very unique or very narrow understanding of Christians, because they're always seeing Christians invading other countries to steal their resources. And because that is, my friends, what is happening in many parts of the world and has been happening for a couple of centuries now. So Bassem, we didn't tell that part of the story, really, or you don't tell that part of the story. We just haven't, because it's not part of, we can't talk about everything, right? So I'm wondering what you think, like if we did talk more to American audiences about that part of the story, do you think people would be as open to, how do you think people would react? The kind of the dark side of the United States that,
Well, Sam, Iraq was invaded for the misconception of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, which proved later that Iraq had none of these weapons. In 2003, when the United States invaded Iraq, it dismantled every institution of the country. We are still suffering from that act. They dismantled the security forces, the army, the police. Almost every government office was dismantled, and we are still suffering. So for Iraqis, they blame the United States for what happened and is still happening in Iraq. Mm-hmm. Because the United States was the superpower that invaded Iraq. Iraqis, after Saddam was removed, they looked at the United States as a savior.
Yeah.
But for a few months, that was the idea, but then everything started to turn the other way. Things started getting worse. Resistance started against the US Army. And now the Iraqis they're not living a happy life. I mean, we have so much unemployment rate among young, over 35% unemployment rate among college graduates. The Iraqi currency has been devalued. It lost about 20% of its value to the US dollar. This raised prices for everyday commodities. The government employee who receives his salary in Iraqi dinar has lost the power to purchase what he used to purchase. In the 2021 budget, there are so many taxes that will be imposed starting next month. So Iraqis, one of the things that Iraqis used to rely on when Saddam was in power was a monthly food ration. It consisted of a food basket of 12 essential food items like rice, flour, cooking oil, tomato paste, kids feeding formulas. This has gone. So many people who relied on this ration are now left with no jobs, no rations. Prices are going up. The daily worker, daily worker will be paid like 15,000 Iraqi dinars. That's about $10. And if he's renting for $200, what's left for him? How can he live?
Yeah.
So really, really, life has not gotten better. It's really got worse.
So when therefore, that's harder for people to understand, for say like Americans to take in. It's easier like you as this human being are so much easier to embrace than is that reality that our government was directly responsible for this destruction of a society, which we invaded for access to the oil and the resource and so on, right? It was not, and that's pretty clear. So we were looking for weapons of mass destruction. It came out late. It wasn't just that we were mistaken, it's that we were lying about that. That was a pretext to invade. That has come out. So it really is, it's harder to really see behind things, to see some of what is really in play. And
Yeah,
sad.
everybody blames the U.S. for what's happening. Everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about forgiveness, you're also not saying, hey, the US is not responsible for this, what happened in Iraq. That's not what you're saying. You're saying,
Oh,
listen,
no,
I
no.
have my own personal journey here that
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
on. And
Oh,
so,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
No,
because
no,
we are.
yeah, forgiveness was for me as a person, as an individual, to keep on living. But on the
Yeah.
other side, I can see the suffering of the people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
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 Hey, let's do this. Let's do our third top hat right now, if we could. It's going to go up. Niche is telling me in about 15 or 20 seconds. And either Kaylee or Colby, which one of you has, we're going to bring one of you on right now. So Colby, we're going to bring Colby on. So, we'll give it a second to get you both on the screen. Jeff is doing that right now. And bro, don't forget to do your top hat. Hey, there you are. Hey, Colby, nice seeing you.
I see you too, Sam. How are you?
I am well. Say hi to Bassam.
Bassam, how are you?
Hi, Colby. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
So go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so when you were talking about like losing friends because of like their like perception of what you think of empathy, like I don't know, how does that like feel? Because I've gone through like losing friends, like being bullied and stuff like that, but like losing friends because you believe in empathy and they don't, and like forgiveness, I just don't know how that comprehends with you.
So Bassam didn't actually lose any friends, but
But
he
like,
has a misunderstandings with people.
yeah.
Yep.
But like,
Yeah, how's
how
that
do
feel?
you?
I did not lose friends. We keep
Okay.
arguing about empathy. They make jokes about empathy, and everything that happens, they say, well, he's empathizing. This is a joke about me now. I can take it, no problem. But they cannot understand empathy. No one of my friends can believe in empathy. None of them.
So they must think I'm crazy then.
But I did make you out crazy.
Lori, do you know Lori and I have been called the parents of radical empathy, right? And so like, look at that. I give birth to an insane idea. But Colby, go ahead. Your question is, so stay with your question a little bit, because I think you're tapping into something good. Yeah.
Like the thought of just like not being able to, I guess, understand why to empathize with something or a cause or like a belief. I think that's like, I don't know how people can like process, like some people just can't process that. And I feel like and you said your friends can't, but like, has there ever been like a time where they've been trying to like empathize and trying to work, or they just still like completely shut down?
To empathize is to weigh the consequences, the good and the bad. You have to think about it. If you don't empathize, what will the outcome be? And if you empathize, what will the outcome be? And you have to weigh it in your mind. What's good for you? What's good for the others? For me, to empathize it will keep me quiet. It will calm me down. It will help me think straight, and it will take hatred out of my mind, because hatred poisons the mind.
Yeah, I always say like as intangible and like non-realistic as the mind is, it's like as realistic as you can possibly think. Like it's like you can tap into some really like deep inner places, but you always need like a sense of stability of just like, I need to breathe. Everything's gonna be all right.
So one thing, Colby, that I was hearing is like one thing that I heard you also asking is like how it feels to be misunderstood, right? So do you have experiences of being misunderstood, like you yourself, like people just can't comprehend where you're at or what you're?
Yeah, I mean, there's like people who like I have like different, I always believe in like I'm not really like religious, and I have like a couple friends who are religious, and they're like trying to convince me. I was like, well, okay, like I get it, I get what you're trying to say, but no, I just am not on like the same level. But like I feel like if I'm speaking to somebody of like, do you understand like why this is this, and like sometimes there's like disagreements with that, and then I feel misunderstood, like they're not understanding my point, but I can also understand that they're not under that I'm not understanding their point either.
Mm-hmm.
So like I've been misunderstood on like multiple like different occasions. Or like if you text, like texting now is really easy to be like, if you send like a period at the end of the sentence, sometimes people are like, "Oh, what's wrong? Are you mad?" Like rather than just being like, "Oh, I was just sorry, trying to be proper like punctuation," like on a text
Yeah.
message. So that's another like level of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Colby, I think self-confidence plays a big part in this. If you're confident of what you're doing and you think you're right, just don't listen to anybody.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. I appreciate that advice. Yeah. I'm always just like, I mean, I've always had like issues with self confidence, kind of, but like it's always good to like kind of reaffirm myself that I'm a person. Everyone else has like their own thoughts, their own like things going on in their life. It's always just good to look at myself and like focus on myself and be confident within myself. So,
Mm. Yeah. In the end, right? In the end, that's really what it is. Yeah, I'm with you, Bassam. I think that's a big part of it. The more we know ourselves, the more we can be nonconformist. We can be outside the circle of all of what is around us telling us that we should be one way or another. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's cool. All right, Colby, do you have a quick final question?
um, oh God. I don't think I do. I just want to like say like thank you for like telling your experience. It's like it is touching, and I have had a friend at home who lost his entire family due to a candle he lit in his room, and the whole house caught on fire, and it leaked into there's a they had one of his mom was on O2, and it caught on an O2 can, it exploded, and like he always just felt like guilty about himself. So I understand like your pain, and like I like want to like empathize with you actually, because like I know it's tough and I've been there. Like, yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Colby.
Thank you.
Hey, Bassam, one thing that we're going to bring Kaylee on in a few minutes. But I want to ask you this idea of like of a global citizen, right? So, hey, y'all, can you put up the slide of Iraq? And this is just this Bassam, this is a map of Iraq that's going to go up in a second. And then we're going to do the one right after that in a second. But so when I look at this slide here, like, so by the way, so Bassam is up here and in Erbil. And, uh, when I look at this map of Iraq, I don't see just the large cities, like Baghdad and Najaf here down here and Erbil and Mosul and so on. I see like in between are just like millions and millions of people who are living their lives, just all these tiny little towns and smaller cities and neighborhoods and houses and farms. And I see just human beings, such a complexity of human beings. And if you go to the next slide of all of these just maps of the world. And I think about just the world and all of these nations. And this isn't, all the nations, but it's just like every one of these is a unique place with unique people and a culture and a way of being and a way of living, and just filled with human beings who are getting on with life in some way. So, Bassam, the question I want to ask you then, as you kind of come back on here, is how important is it that for this journey that you've been on, how important has it been for you to be a citizen of the world? Because I see that you, to a degree, that you and I both are citizens of the world, right? I mean, you have an Iraqi passport, Iraqi citizenship. I have a U.S. passport, U.S. citizenship. But like, I feel like we're both citizens of life, of the world, of humanity, right? We respond to in some ways like a different, I don't know, something. So can you say something about that?
Well, to be an international, I call it international citizen, is to feel the pain of others. Like, I look at so many places, like you brought Haiti into my attention years ago and by your visit to Haiti. I look at Myanmar, what's happening in Myanmar. I look at the battles in Yemen. I look at what's happening in Syria. I feel blessed with the education that I have, that I can see what's happening outside of where I am. I sympathize with people. I made friends in the past 5 years in the United States. I made friends in the Netherlands. I made friends who are with us in wording conversation. We text, we email. So I feel that I'm broadening my mind, listening to other people. And sometimes when you hear the miseries of others, your misery seems very small.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I know. You know, we say that, right? People say that, but it's not till you really walk into the world in a certain way that you really understand what that means. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Haiti. We mentioned, you know, all the things that the different places, the different worlds that you brought into my life and then others that I brought into yours. Yeah. It really is a big, hey, let's bring, we have a couple questions from the stream that we're going to ask, but Jeff and Nish, can you bring Kaylee on? And then the three of us will talk for a second. So Kaylee, so if you have a very specific question, you can ask. Otherwise, I have a, not very specific, but if this is an opportunity for you to speak with Bassem. And if you would, so anyway, there, Kaylee, meet Bassem, Kaylee.
Hi, Kaylee.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I just want to say.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. It's really, really moving and really, I can't even begin to comprehend what you went through in life. But I know I have so many questions, but I guess the first one I want to start with is when you decided to, go to the U.S. government and, try and plead your case and tell them everything that happened and tried and get some sort of justice. I'm just wondering, what expectations did you have going into it? And were you surprised at all by the outcome that you initially got after going to them?
Well, I had three goals. First was to clear my name and disassociate the name of my family of ISIS. The second was to know why.
Can I interrupt? The reason is because I know people will wonder this, because if the coalition forces bombed Bassem's house, that must mean they targeted his house for a reason, and the reason must be because he is supporting ISIS. And so therefore, all of his neighbors and people in the community that say, hey, they bombed the house of Abu Bassem or Abu Bassem Rasso, and they said, oh, the Americans did, that must mean he supports ISIS, because otherwise they wouldn't bomb his house. And then that's a really dangerous place for Bassem to be, because everybody thinks that he was supporting the enemy. Okay, so go ahead, Bassem.
Yeah. So the first was to clear my name. The second was to know why, what happened, why was my house bombed, and the third was to get financial compensation, because I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my job, I lost all my earnings. I became almost crippled for 6 months. I can no longer work. So going into the embassy, the first step was for me to get answers. I know when I came out, for 2 months, I did not hear anything from them. And then I started emailing back. And then a friend, journalist, came into the picture, and she started lobbying for me. For financial reward, I knew going in that I would not get much. But the most important thing for me was to clear my name and to know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess going off of that, I mean, after hearing from what you said and also reading about your story, and I just think it's insane how they offered you little to nothing despite accidentally bombing your house. But I guess my question is, how do you think that the US government could improve their relations with other countries and do more to, try and, I'm trying to think of the word, compensate others and also express some sort of sympathy for their mistakes and how they could do more to just express that they made a mistake? And how do you think they could, I guess I'm just saying, like, how do you think they could better their relations with people who are victims of their tactical mistakes?
Let's mention the amount I was offered at the beginning. The usual payment for a killed Iraqi or an Afghanistan or Syrian or a Yemeni is $2,500. But in my case, and because of my connections and because of the way my case was published, they offered me $7,500 for my wife and $7,500 for my daughter. So total was 15,000 USD. And I met here in Erbil with the representative from the DOD, and I rejected the amount. The thing is, they do not call it a compensation, they call it solashia. Solashia is another word of just trying to show good intent to the family of the dead and the killed. If they do offer compensation, then they will open a new door for thousands of people. Thousands of people got killed in Iraq, thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And there's no way they can compensate everybody. There's no way. And because it's an act of war, and then some international treaties, then nobody is eligible for compensation because this was during military operations. But in my case, it was not during a military operation because liberation of the city started late 2016, and the bombing of my house was in September 2015. The compensation was ridiculous, and they just gave me the runaround for 4 years.
So, Kaylee, one thing to know is, war is, most people who die in modern day wars are civilians. They're not combatants. And increasingly, wars are being fought in civilian areas. And it's not just because the combatants, we'll just say they hide in, civilian areas and schools and churches and mosques and so on. It's not just that, that's the story we tell ourselves. But for those of us who study these issues, it goes beyond that. And so when we decide to go to war and we make that decision to go to war, we know that civilians are going to die. That's just how it is. And you start with that, and that's going to weigh on the conscience of a people, and it should weigh on the conscience of politicians. And so, Kaylee, that's an answer that I would have for you. Hey, Kaylee, let me ask you, do you have any question about Islam? Do you know anything about Islam?
I don't know much other than the bare minimum I learned in high school, so I don't really have a lot of knowledge about it.
Uh-huh. What do you think about Muslims? When you think about Muslims, what's your first feeling? First thought, your first couple of thoughts, let's say.
I guess I just think of, they have different religion, different lifestyle than everyone, but they're not much different from us. And I just think it's so unfortunate that they kind of have this target on their back and that they receive so much hate from society. When I've just from my interactions with Muslim people, I just feel like they're some of the kindest people I've met. And they're always very nice, very caring, very understanding of others. And it's just unfortunate that I feel like they get a lot of hatred, even though a lot of the hatred that is directed towards them has nothing to do with them, and it has to do with the actions of others who were doing things that probably weren't even in the name of Islam or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Hey, listen, thanks for that. Thanks, Haley. Kaylee. Did I say it right? Kaylee?
Kaylee, yeah.
Kaylee. All right. Awesome. Hey, so thanks for your questions, and thanks for that response. That's a really nice response.
Thank you.
Yeah, be well. Yeah. Hey, Abu Bassem, we are, by the way, the final top head is going up right now, and it is up right now. Bassem, you are coming back on the screen for the final few minutes. Can you, what's the final, can you tell the American students about facilitating, and those who join the Foundation's facilitator team next semester will have the opportunity to meet with and work alongside and study alongside with some of the students from Iraq, from Mosul, from Najaf, from Erbil. So can you have 1 minute to make a pitch for people applying to become facilitators and taking that very awesome journey and being connected to you directly.
Jumping into wording conversation, it's an experience that you will really, really enjoy. And I am hearing such nice things about facilitating and people getting to know each other. And what's really making me happy is that students from Penn State and Iraq are conversating between them after dialogues. This is the thing that really makes me happy. You will make new friends, and you never know. Maybe you'll come visit in Iraq and you have friends in Iraq. So it's an experience that just take it.
Yeah, and then you go visit.
Yeah.
And then Bassem takes you out to this awesome restaurant and feed you so much food that you come back, or better yet, go to your mother's house where you have so much food that you can't eat for a week. All right. Well, listen, Bassem, you notice I have the Egyptian beads today. I don't know if you probably can't see them. So here, hang on. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, the black and silver.
Hey, so listen, thank you as always.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Ramadan is starting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very cool.
Yeah, we've been working for the last 3 days just to make the dialogues work in Ramadan. I've been talking to JD, and we finally got scheduling on way.
We got it. Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Thank you, Tom.
as always, and we'll be in touch. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, be well, Bassem.
You too, bye-bye.
Okay, class. We'll see you on Thursday. It's going to be a really, really interesting class for sure. Guaranteed. All right, be well. Enjoy this warm weather.